Welcome to the first edition of the Career and Startups Intelligence Series. And let me welcome all of our participants from all over the continent of Africa who today have signed in to be part of this movement that is aimed at bringing together a critical mass of Africans, young African entrepreneurs who have one singular objective: to ensure that Africa can take its critical place in the global arena. And today we are starting off with such a very, very important personality that needs no introduction. This is a man that started from nowhere, and today, by God's grace, has risen to the level where he commands not just respect domestically, but at the global level. And I'm sure as you have joined in, you are going to learn a lot that is going to help you to become what God really, really wants you to be. This is not a program that is just going to, trying to get people to get excited and what have you. No, this is a program that aims at ensuring that we can lift people out of poverty so that by 2063, Africa can take its place. And I'm delighted that you have joined in. Let me welcome our distinguished, we call him Chief Mentor, Dr. Patrick Bitature, the chairman of Simba Group of Companies. Sir, you are welcome. Thank you very much. Now, before I bring Dr. Onto the stage, permit me to give you some sort of put this whole thing in context. And I'm going to start off by telling us why we have gathered here. So I just want to show you some few slides that would give us an insight into why we have gathered here. So if you can just give me the slides so that I can pick it from there. And so I just want to show, according to World Trade, the World Bank, the April report, it says that the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement creates the largest trade area in the world. The largest trade area in the world as far as the global marketplace is concerned. And the pact connects 1.3 billion people because of the 55 countries that make up the continent. And if you talk about it in terms of dollars, we are talking about $3.4 trillion that Africa is going to provide the whole global world as far as business is concerned or the trade is concerned. Now, currently, Africa accounts for 2% of global trade and 17% of exports that is done intra-continental, compared to 59% of Asia and 68% for Europe. Now, again, today, Africa makes up 60% of the global population. And we are told that by 2050, we will comprise 25% of the entire global population. And by 2050, like you mentioned the last time in June when you came to speak during the dialogue, you said by 2050, 10 of the biggest 50 cities in the entire whole world will be in Africa. That's an awesome revelation. Now, so I just want to show this program, this poster that tells us about the extent of poverty of the world. Now, if you look at this place where I've highlighted, you see Africa, out of the entire global world, constitute 27% of the population are below poverty line. If you look at the numbers, you come to a place like, let's say Europe, is only 0.7. And yet in Africa, 27%. That is serious. And then you look at the rest of it, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and what have you. The number doesn't look good. And if you compare it with other continents, we are not doing bad. We are doing worse. So the question is, there's a scripture in the Bible, and this is what I want us to look at. He said, the rich and the poor have one thing in common. And the common thing, like the mathematicians will say, the denominator is that the Lord God created each one of them. Now, when we talk about this thing, a lot of time people say that, okay, it's God who created the poor and the rich, but that's not true. What it means is that God created every one of us equally. But some people decided to work hard and pull themselves out of poverty. That's why today they are rich. So our why, the reason why we have put this program together, which we call our why, is to provide startups and young professionals, particularly women and youth, with the opportunity to grasp the changes taking place in the marketplace as a result of the digital transformation and the skills required to stay relevant as a business or career professional. So in a nutshell, our focus is to help save women and youth-focused businesses and young professionals. This is why we have put this together. The question people have asked us is, why women? Now, we have chosen to focus on women because according to World Trade Organization, women-focused businesses in the digital economy could be the catalyst for lasting change and sustainable growth in Africa. This will enable Africa to meet the goals set out in the UN Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development, and more specifically, the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. So therefore, the question has always been, why women? And we've come to realize that women play a critical role as entrepreneurs. In fact, if you look at the EAC within the East African community, according to UNCHA Trade, Gender and Development Program, women are predominantly self-employed or entrepreneurs. This applies to 97% of women in Burundi, 73% in Kenya, 84% in Rwanda, 80% in Tanzania, and 83% in Uganda, right here. So this program is basically about helping to pull people out of poverty. And I want to show this small video. I want to show this small video just to encapsulate our core objective of this program. Doctor, this is the main focus of this program, that will raise a critical mass of young African entrepreneurs who can then pull out their people from every part of this continent so that together Africa can take its rightful place in the global arena. This is where we are now, and this is where we are heading towards. So the question I want to put to you, Doctor, is that with all that you have done, where do you see Africa? And what does Africa need to do by way of technology, transformational leadership, and startups? Where do we lie? Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Emmanuel. First of all, I must thank you for organizing this event. It's quite a tall order to organize an event at this level, this scale, across the African continent. And this shows how driven you are, your focus and your determination to make this happen. And I salute you. When you talked to me first time about this, I didn't think it was going to happen. So I'm delighted to be here today, and let's see how we can share, especially with the young people out there and the women that you talk about, and of course everybody else, to see at least one person's perspective. My perspective may not agree with everybody, but it's some perspective, because it's a big challenge to me. Why are we in this quagmire? What do we need to do? Will we hand over to the next generation Africa in the same way that it is today? It's embarrassing. I just don't want that to happen. Unfortunately, we have squandered a lot of time. I was optimistic after independence, where we came from. The country was rising. Then we took a turn for the bad. Then we seemed to be recovering, and then took another turn for the worse. And so it has been a checkered history for most of Africa. So today in my presentation, I'll take you a little bit into the past to see where we are coming from, where we are in this fast evolving world, because the rest of the world has really moved ahead. And its pace, it's like a snowball. It's gaining momentum. It's growing faster. But we are still so far behind in an agrarian, largely agrarian society. So I'll use some slides because pictures say 1,000 words. I feel I have so much to share and in so little time. So bear with me because my pace will be quite fast. So I want to come from a global perspective. What happened in the rest of the world, and why are they different from us? The number one thing that came to my mind was after the Second World War, the First World decided to have a policy of no more wars. Whatever their differences, they would sit down, come to a round table, and discuss options. But one person declaring unilateral war and trying to take on the rest of the countries was a no-go area. And that has seemed to hold place. There have been a few skirmishes here and there. Yugoslavia broke up, Serbia and some of those countries. But largely, the Western world, the Americas, have had peace, especially North America and Western Europe. So what has happened? In my perspective, there have been what I call winds of change. Because that solidarity that was used at the United Nations that brought about peace occasionally had winds of change. And I'm going to take you back in history here. From around 1400, when the first slaves were picked from the West African coast of around Cameroon, and for the next 400 years, there was slave trade. So Africa had been so badly exploited. I know it's embarrassing. It's a subject that's been talked about so often, but we have to know our history and why we are so weak. Because we were so exploited. And for 400 years, that's a very long time. After that, we were colonized. And colonization lasted about 150 years. Not even half of the period of slave trade. Between 1810 and 1960. And then there was neo-colonialism when they decided to cede independence to most of these African countries. So between 1960 and 1990, most countries were suffering under the yoke of debt, the neo-colonialism. They called the tune. Fortunately, around 1989, there was a new breeze or a new wind that blew across the world. The Cold War suddenly collapsed. This war had been tearing up the country and the global arena, and the world was polarized between communism and capitalism. And then in 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell, it was all over. A year after that, apartheid, which had been a war for South Africans for over 100 years, the ANC had been fighting, and the black people in South Africa, with many Africans on the continent, were trying to fight for Mandela's freedom and to fight to end apartheid. That only happened in 1990. Then we had other challenges, which again needed global solidarity, where the whole world comes together that let's sort out this problem. There was the problem of HIV/AIDS. Now that was a problem. They got together, scientists, and said, let's see what we can do about this global problem. Marburg followed, and Ebola as diseases that all common sent a signal to the first world that we need to find a global solution for this problem. Thereafter, we started realizing that the world is changing around us. Global warming was having a serious effect. The extreme weather, as we have seen lately, not just in America, in Turkey, in China, even the extreme floods in places like northern Germany, northwestern Germany, and parts of Africa. Global warming became a global phenomenon that everybody wanted to contribute to. So this solidarity would bring us together. We seem to come together when we're in a period of shock. 9/11 was a big blow, especially to America. And that was when they declared war on terrorism. And they decided they've got to deal a decisive blow on the Al-Qaeda, ISIS, whatever form of terrorism. And that was a new wind that was coming through. That lasted for a long time, almost 20 years, and I'll talk a bit about it later when you see the withdrawal from Afghanistan and how much has been spent. Then we had the global financial crisis, which was caused by the housing bubble in the United States in 2008. This sent ripples across the globe. Now, this was a crisis that shook the world economically. But the world came together. The central banks, all the decision makers, political makers, they agreed on finding a solution to get out of this problem. And then recently, we had the coronavirus. That was in 2019. And wow, what a crisis that created. A global problem, so big that it made the global financial crisis look small. In the global financial crisis, one major bank went down, the Lehman Brothers. They let that fall, and they thought they wanted to see what would happen. But the ripples that came out of that were shocking. And they decided to move in quickly and said, never again should we have a global problem, that we shouldn't react quickly. Then when the coronavirus struck, and it hit every part of the world, we first thought it was a Chinese problem. And then it went to Italy, and then to Europe, Spain and some of the countries, then Britain. Eventually it got to America. And it was the only subject for 1 year on CNN. And Trump, with all his attempts to dominate the space, was overcast. He was eclipsed by the COVID phenomenon. It was a big blow to society. And here we thought, because we have learned from the past, that we have to get together when there's a global problem. This time, we realized Africa, we were on our own. there was an acute shortage of PPE to help the people, especially the frontline workers. Not just in Europe, especially in Africa. They had problems there too, but after they sorted out their problem and there was an abundance, the problem remained in Africa for a very long time. There was a shortage of masks, a shortage of testing kits, and then that went on to become a shortage of vaccines because people could not get vaccinations. So today some countries have vaccinated 60, 70, maybe 75% of their populations. But many countries in Africa have vaccinated 2 to 4% of their population. How on earth do we think we shall overcome this problem if we let this virus mutate in Africa? Because it will mutate and will keep going back and spreading the rest of the world. We have seen a selfishness of a new kind. We have realized that we have been exposed and we have got to wake up and learn the lesson. We are grateful for the first world and the solidarity they've given us, but as Africans, we need to get our act together. Never again should this happen. Now quickly, why are we where we are? First of all, the education system that we have is obsolete. Memorization of information for exams just won't cut it anymore. That was a thing of the past. The rest of the world has moved on to critical thinking, but we are stuck on this rote learning in schools and exams, and that's all it takes. The internet has replaced the need to remember so many facts. You have to learn to invest in yourself. The knowledge must be within you. The ability to solve problems must be within you. First, develop that capacity inside you. Then you start up a business. Then you start up charitable work. Then you can do good things outside. But you must first build internal capacity. Siri and Alexa were born of the internet. These are babies of the internet. And I urge all the people, my brothers and sisters across the continent, learn to love Google, because that information at the snip of your fingers is amazing. Question everything. Become woke, but don't believe in anything without checking the numbers. We must develop critical thinking skills. We must change and transform ourselves to be machines that learn very quickly, ferociously eating up whatever information you get, so that you can learn quickly and adapt to the environment. You need to be able to connect the dots. And the word precognition is a science of telling what's going to happen in the future. That's what the guys who run the biggest corporate companies in the world do today. They are not relying on what they went to school for, because whatever you studied will become obsolete. This helps them predict the future, whether it's with Facebook, with Apple, with Amazon. All these people are trying to predict what will happen, and they make sure they make what they think should happen. Now they are going to space, and here we are still learning what the formula of energy is. That's just unacceptable.
Sure. As people are still schooling under trees in some countries.
It's just unacceptable. The gap is becoming wider and wider.
Sure.
The future is digital and empowered by the internet. There's a need to embrace science and technology. We've got a lot of software that's available, freely available, and I'm not going to go into the details. All this is available off the internet. There are different institutions like LearnVest and edX, MIT OpenCourseWare. They give you information free, but best of all is YouTube. There is so much information today on YouTube. It's unbelievable. And podcasts. This information is free, literally free to download. You can learn to do anything off YouTube. So I ask my brothers and sisters, embrace it. Because the future of the world is about this fast-growing industry. And they are using ICT and Fintech services as enablers. This is the future we are going to be in, and we've got to embrace it. Those who stay behind and let this digital era pass will be like the dinosaurs. We have to embrace what is happening. And the only good thing probably that came out of this coronavirus is it accelerated the process of digitization. Who is the richest man in the world? And what does he do? One thing. He owns the e-platform.
Sure.
An e-commerce platform, the biggest in the world, that does A to Z. Anything from A to Z. The Amazon, that little arrow that shows you he's ready to sell anything on his platform. That's the ambition this man had. And see where it has landed him. He's smiling all the way to the bank. The most successful companies in the world today are the ones that leverage the most ICT. Many of you have heard of FAN, and I don't have to go into the details.
Sure.
But that's the future. Where are the African players in this space?
Precisely.
And we cannot stay behind forever. Anyway, back to Africa. Let's begin with the basics. Africa needs, first of all, to deal with the basics. Number one.
Doctor, before you go to number one, I think this is very, very important for us. So let our participants online realize that what is happening now, we have translation in French, and we have translation in Kiswahili as well. So if you are listening and you're struggling with the English or whatever, and you are a French-speaking person, please, you can sign up on the French line. If you are a Kiswahili person, Asante Sana, you can also sign up on the Kiswahili version. So now let's talk about Africa. This is where my focus is, Africa.
Africa needs to deal with some of the basics first. Number one, especially because of our fast-growing population, we need to address food security. We are growing so fast, and I'll go into that in detail. But agriculture, because we have a huge competitive advantage, we don't have extreme weather like the winters they have. So we can grow crops throughout the year. And if we can focus on high-value crops, people have become more conscious. Things like the Hass avocado, the macadamia. These are products that will bring revenue because the rest of the world wants them, and they cannot grow them in their environment. You won't grow these avocados in Russia or in China. Some of those places with extreme weather, the trees just won't survive.
That's right.
They cannot afford, it doesn't make sense to put heating and lighting in some of those places. Livestock, we need to supply this to the domestic market because we have a huge population. 1.3 billion people today, and by 2050, maybe 2 billion people. So there will be demand. And this plays into our demographics. Besides that, people are earning a little bit more. There's a fast-growing middle class. With increasing affluence, more people want to eat protein. Those who couldn't eat, I know in our villages, most people still are eating beans and maize and sticking to the cereals. As soon as they make a bit of money, they want protein. Now, the people in the first world are moving away from beef and protein. Then they are going back to vegetarian dishes, which is an irony, the paradox of life. However, let's focus on the opportunities. Huge opportunities, especially for the youth and for women. Easy to get into, easy to start. Poultry, piggery. These kind of industries are easy to manage. Learning the skills can be learned within 2 weeks, how to manage these affairs and grow your small business. Another critical area we've learned out of this COVID crisis is the need to develop important, crucial internal capacity in the healthcare industry and the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes.
We cannot remain beggars and at the mercy of the first and second world. The third world has got to get involved. We have to manufacture, we have to produce these products in our countries. Another area that is a must for Africa is to make sure we develop our military capacity and our sustainable energy. Because without energy, without electricity, we cannot transform. The first industrial revolution was about steam, moving away from muscle power to steam. The second was about electricity. The third was about computing. The fourth is about knowledge and power. And today, where is Africa? Most of Africa is still at the agrarian stage. Agriculture, purely. We don't have enough electricity in the continent, and we still have challenges with our individual military unions. The African Union is trying to put some order, but it's still got a journey to go, a long journey ahead of it. But we'll get there, I have no doubt. So I ask myself, what is it that differentiates us from those people in the first world? From childhood, is it the games that we play when we are young? Many people think of these games as having no consequences. Many of you out there have played snakes and ladders, and you understand the luck, the element of luck when you throw the die and see how far you can go. You'll be lucky, you get up a ladder and you shoot up. You get unlucky, you get a snake and you come back down. There's a reason. This is tempering us. Now, many of the children in Africa still have not played these games, understanding the role of luck and the role of hard work. Ludo is easier to play with. Monopoly is a brilliant game. I started playing this when I was young, and I realized it's not a matter of luck. You've got to do the numbers. Invest time in understanding. When you land on a piece of land, whether to buy that land or not, whether to build a house or not, whether to build a hotel or not, whether to mortgage the other pieces that you own so that you develop one property or not. If you don't do the numbers, and it's a bit of a detailed analysis, I won't go into the details today, but it's a fantastic game, and please make sure you do the numbers. Study the game, then you're always ahead of the curve. Too few people apply their minds in the game of Monopoly. They just think it's about luck, and then you argue their way out. In Africa, all too often, unfortunately, when we think about strategy, we think about matter, playing cards. That's not enough. We've got to go deeper. We've got to introduce chess. If I had my way, every school would have to play chess. Like we have football in nearly every school, to teach people to think strategically. It is vital. Where I hail from in the village, every school there will start playing chess. We have begun a program where we're encouraging people. The school I went to encouraged chess in Uganda, led by Father Grimes in Amasagali. And it's changed our thinking. It changes the way you see life. You have to be strategic in whatever you do. What do other games do? Because basketball is a fast-growing game. Rwanda has decided to focus around basketball, which is fantastic for Africa, I think, to promote it. because it was largely an American sport. But Africans are now getting into basketball. And they are champions. I was proud to see South Sudan doing so well because they have the natural height. But the biggest thing for me from basketball is the strict discipline. You cannot dribble that ball and walk even one step. The whistle blows. It teaches you discipline, which is crucial for the rest of your life. Now, when you don't get engaged at the early stage in understanding the rules of the game and abiding by those rules strictly, then you're easily going to fall prey. You cannot stay on the straight and narrow road. So I encourage people to play games that encourage discipline. I ask myself in Africa, why do we love football so much? So much that we follow football in Europe, in England, whether it is Barcelona or Manchester United or Arsenal, people have teams that they love. They get so committed to these teams. We play the same game in Africa. The same number of people, 11 people on either side with the same size ball. We play the game, but we love it at a high level. What is it that makes us think like this? We need to get out of it because so many African players are now being taken to Europe, but we failed to get our act together just for that sport within Africa, to take on the big boys. So, as I end that area of Africa's priority areas, I must warn you. We are now living in a new era, an era called VUCA, where it's about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Sure. This is now the new world order. You've got to expect the unexpected. You've got to be agile and move quickly when you see an opportunity. You've got to be flexible, not rigid. If you are rigid like a tree, when the wind comes, you will not be able to bend, you will break. You've got to be persistent. You never give up. You need to be focused and keep an open mind.
Sure.
And those who do not embrace adaptability will perish. So what am I talking about here? Africa today, where we are, and my take is, we must change our attitude. We've got to change the way we think, and that's not easy, before we can change our behavior. Many people think changing behavior is easy. It's a process, and it begins with changing the attitude, the mindset. Get that fixed, change the way you think every day. Eventually, you form habits that will protect you. That will be your behavior. And you see, I use a spanner, a tough spanner right there, to get things going. It's not easy to change behavior.